Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to everybody joining Community Insight Live with Abdul Jabbar. Today is a special program that I bring you on a Thursday evening. So today's program, I've got Rob with me, Rob Holman, who's going to talk about the meeting in Shipley and what that is about, and also the London demo. So I'd like to welcome Rob. Can you hear me, Rob?
I can. Thank you very much, AJ. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll start. Obviously, I'll just introduce the subject that we're going to be covering, which is two meetings. One meeting and one national demo, and one local meeting in Shipley. And both are very important, I think, that we need to discuss about. So the Shipley one, just the date is on the 29th, isn't it? So 29th of January.
It's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday at what time is it?
It's at 7 o'clock in Shipley Library, AJ, and we have the subject of the meeting is the rise of Islamophobia and racism more generally, and the threat from the far right. I'll say a bit more about that a bit later on, but we have a fantastic platform. We're welcoming Councillor Mohsin Ali from Leeds. I don't know if people know, but Councillor Mohsin was targeted by the wannabe Nazi Elon Musk all over his social media. I'm not quite sure what Mohsin is supposed to have done. What I know he's done is act in a really responsible way in relation to the community around various provocations from the police and the authorities. And of course, he's a very principled man, and for this, he has been targeted by Elon Musk. In addition, we have another independent councillor, Councillor Ishtiaq Ahmed, who is from Heaton Ward, and a very good and very old friend of mine. We have Professor Saira Shakir, who teaches at Leeds Trinity University, where she teaches on questions of racism and particularly critical race theory. And we also have a trades unionist, Dennis White, who's the Assistant Secretary of Bradford National Education Union, which organises the teachers. And they're all coming together, and we hope there's going to be lots of discussion as well, to discuss where this rise in Islamophobia and racism is coming from and what we should do about it. And then just a few days later, on Saturday, there's going to be a big protest in London against the supporters of the fascist Tommy Robinson. He's mobilised a lot of people in London in recent times, and we want to counter-protest him on the very simple premise that, if we have more out than them, that's demoralising for them, and it's encouraging to us, because we want to try and stop this rise of Islamophobia in its tracks, and send the people who are promoting it back into the sewers from which they've emerged.
Just about Councillor Mohsin, I think he was attempting when the riots, I think, took place in Leeds,
Yeah.
which were for a different reason, and it didn't one just one race or another race. There was a little bit of troubles that caused after the police or the social services took some children in.
That's right.
So and he actually was pointing out the fires, and he was telling people to calm down and not to attack people's property. And as far as I remember,
yeah.
So
yes, you're absolutely right. What had happened was that the authorities, backed up by the police, had come in and removed a small number of children from a family in an area where the Roma community lives. And I think it was a Roma family from whom the children were removed. And there was a lot of anger about it, the way it was done and the process and so on and so forth. And in fact, I believe the children were later returned. And I think in a way it was acknowledged by the authorities that there was a mistake made. But there was a lot of anger. But Councillor Mohsin intervened to ensure that there wasn't the kind of reaction that we saw from the racists back in August when they became inflamed about what had happened in Southport. So he had a calming influence. He stopped people doing things which might have got them arrested. A product of their anger, and in many respects their justifiable anger, but obviously not something we want to see. So he played an extremely responsible role around that. But as I say, for his prominence around that issue, he's now been targeted by the racists and by the richest man in the world, the man who has celebrated the election of Donald Trump and who has the platform of X to put across his foul views, Elon Musk. So we're very much going to welcome Mohsin Ali onto our platform. Unfortunately, he can't come over from Leeds. He'll be on Zoom. But it'll be fantastic to see him and to hear from him at the meeting.
That's excellent. We in Bradford we've seen the far right come and try to create problems, and provoke the community so many times. I think one time at one time they were able to provoke the riots that happened. I think we need to learn lessons from that, and need to stand against racism, and what lessons can we learn from that? That we should not be the ones that should get blamed for it, because these are the trouble causes are coming into our communities. And EDL has come not only when that happened, but afterwards. It was in BNP, I think it was at that time, but afterwards the EDL kept coming every couple of years, and their mainly the focus has been like Pakistani grooming gangs, and trying to say all the Pakistanis are doing is just sort of like generalization. And we've now got facts and figures that what it is it's 80% of the grooming gangs is white, and
No, absolutely. I mean, we're in very dangerous times, I think, AJ.
yeah,
The election of Donald Trump in the United States and his speech at his inauguration have given a lot of encouragement and confidence to the far right, who've always been lurking out there, but in recent times they haven't had the confidence to come out in the numbers, but it's been growing recently. It's also given confidence to Reform UK, and let's come back to that in a moment. But these people in this country who've been given confidence by Donald Trump's election are trying to exploit the issue of grooming gangs and the horrible exploitation of young girls in many instances by those grooming gangs, trying to exploit that to whip up racism and in particular Islamophobia. Now, you're quite right in saying that when you look at the statistics for child sexual abuse, overwhelming majority of child sexual abuse is carried out by people who are not Muslims, but are actually from the white communities. Over 80%, it's 83%. People might forget, but they shouldn't, that the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has recently resigned as Archbishop because he covered up a paedophile member of the Church of England. People should know that the Roman Catholic Church has paid out billions of dollars because of because they've been sued by people who've been the victims of paedophile priests. So I mean, no one wants to cover up, when grooming gangs and where paedophile takes place. On the contrary, people should be exposed and they should be properly punished for that, and they should be prevented from doing that wherever we can. But the idea that this is something that is peculiar to a minority section of the community that might come from originally from a particular part of the world is absolute nonsense. But it's been ruthlessly exploited, not only actually by the fascists and the far right, it's being exploited by Robert Jenrick, who's a leading member of the Conservative Party. He almost became leader of the Conservative Party. Nigel Farage of the Reform UK. And of course, even worse is the fact that rather than saying this is nonsense. Get this into proportion. This isn't a Muslim thing. It's not a Pakistani thing. It's, child abuse, sexual abuse is rife across many different communities, and we must be opposed to it and so forth. Instead of saying that, even the Labour government has said, oh, yes, we must have more inquiries, and they haven't answered the foul prejudice and bigotry that's being uttered by the far right. So this is a very dangerous situation for us, and we must do everything we possibly can to combat these lies and to combat the rise of the far right.
Absolutely. I think the issue is that the mainstream media and the political politicians that are like mainstream, they they saw like start appeasing or leaning because the far right is the more of a threat, and they have they can create a lot of fear and division and hatred. So the mainstream politicians and maybe they try to appease these people to say, look, we're gonna like with the conservatives. They said, we'll send the refugees to Rwanda. So and with the cases, the refugees that are here that have supposed to be their cases are supposed to be have been dealt a long time ago. There's waiting time for these refugees. I mean, and it's refugees, immigrants. They made to be out to be scapegoats, like as if they've come for they've escaped war-torn regions and
yeah.
So,
no, absolutely. But all of this is a piece with what happened last August around Southport. The rumor went around then that the person who perpetrated the terrible murder of the 3 young girls was a refugee, an asylum seeker. It was untrue. The guy who's clearly got very serious mental illness, if I can put it that way, was born in Cardiff. He's not from someone who's just come across in a boat. That's complete nonsense. But it's this idea that somehow the country is being invaded by aliens who have different culture, nasty culture. This is the same thing that's going on now around the grooming gangs. It's blatant racism, it's blatant Islamophobia, and it's being exploited by a whole host of people, and particularly, of course, Reform UK, who are trying to boost their vote. And they have a worryingly high level of support now in the electorate. The last opinion poll that I saw, they were only 1% behind the Labour Party. But if I could add two other things very quickly, AJ. The first was that somehow, in relation to these grooming gangs, because they consisted largely, I'm not sure exclusively, of people of Pakistani heritage and who were Muslims, that somehow the police went soft on them because of some political correctness, because of, being woke or something like that. And this then fits into the second thing, that somehow there's a two-tier policing, which is harsh against the white community, but very congenial and nice and friendly and soft on the Muslim community. And of course, both of these claims are completely untrue. Insofar as the police did not pursue these grooming gangs as they should have done, and it's an open question whether that's true, but insofar as they didn't, it was because they didn't take seriously the young girls who were being abused, because those young girls were, how shall we say, not particularly educated. They were very poor. They were often in homes, in care homes, and so forth. So the police didn't respect them properly. It was nothing to do with being woke about the perpetrators. They just didn't take them seriously. And the second thing is this idea that there's two-tier policing, which is somehow generous to the Muslim community and harsh on the white community, is utter nonsense. Anybody knows that over the history of the last, however many years, the police has been institutionally racist. Any number of reports have come out accepting that they've been institutionally racist. It came out in the Lawrence inquiry report, the Macpherson inquiry, and so forth. And anybody, of course, in the Muslim and the Asian communities know that they don't get equal treatment. They don't always get fair treatment from the police. There is two-tier policing, all right, and there's a two-tier justice system, but it's much harsher on those from ethnic minorities, from Muslims, people of Pakistani heritage. So, this is just fake news. It's the reverse of the truth.
Just to let everybody know, we're discussing the meeting that's going to be taking place on Wednesday, 29th of January at 7 p.m. in Shipley Library. And just talking to Rob Holman about the meeting that's going to be taking place there and what kind of issues that we're looking to be discussing about far-right racism and Islamophobia. So if you want the details, Rob, do you want to give your number or details?
But by all means, the details are that the meeting is on Wednesday, the 29th of January, and everybody who is against racism and Islamophobia will be welcome. We're not welcoming those who want to come along and say racist things, and I don't think they're going to attend, fortunately. So a very big welcome to everybody who wants to come and join in a discussion about how we combat racism. The meeting is at Shipley Library, and it's at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 29th of January, organised by Bradford Stand Up to Racism.
Excellent. So just to carry on with that, we're living in a world of capitalism. I mean, I read your article, and where people's, working class people, where majority of working class people, what I'd say is the mass majority of people struggling under the harsh economic conditions, austerity that has been placed because due to the capitalist policies that have been adopted, and people are not able to link those policies to the problems they have today. So I think the capitalist elite is trying to use the system to scapegoat and deflect blame from themselves, so people don't look at them and say, look, these are the guys at the top who are, sucking up all our resources, sucking up all our, and they're telling us, oh yeah, there's a trickle down theory, where people will get bigger, better if you keep working and working and working. But it's not a fair distribution of wealth or resources.
No. Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, AJ. In fact, over the last 40 years of the great neoliberal experiment that we've been suffering under, what we've seen is much lower levels of economic growth, a widening of the gap between the rich and poor, massive, and it's been growing rapidly, in particular in recent years through the COVID years and so forth. So a widening gap. And for those who actually produce the wealth of society, the working class, the people who go to work every day for a wage, their situation has been becoming worse in a number of ways. Work has become more precarious. People are being driven harder. They're not getting the wage increases that they deserve. But also there's been the erosion of social welfare, of the NHS, where anybody who's tried to see a doctor, or you go to hospital and there's very long queues, or there are long delays before you get an operation. The NHS is hugely underfunded now, and in other areas too. Education has suffered. So all of those things on which working people depend have been eroded, and their own working conditions. Now, the question is why? And the point is, I think, that we live in a system, unfortunately, which is governed by profit. And the bosses have been trying to squeeze more and more profit out of it, but not enough to keep the system growing and delivering something to working people. And that's created a lot of disillusionment at the bottom. And it's very unfortunate, I think, that instead of that disillusionment going to the left and saying, don't we have to fundamentally reform, change the situation, maybe change it very radically from the kind of, free market profit-seeking system that we have at the moment. Instead of things moving in that direction, you've had these right-wing parties, right-wing people, very right-wing people like Donald Trump in America, and in this country, Nigel Farage and the Reform UK, who say, oh yes, we're very sorry about the situation you're in. It's all because of these other people who've done it, and we're going to make things much better, and we're going to make things much better by kicking immigrants out of the country and stopping immigrants coming in. So they're trying to deflect attention on the system itself and what the failings of the system are onto people who are themselves the victims of the system, just as ordinary working people are. So they do all of that, posing, of course, as anti-establishment. Oh, it's the establishment, it's the woke establishment that have done all of this. I'm going to be different, says Donald Trump. I'm going to be different, says Nigel Farage. And yet these people, Trump and Farage, are enormously wealthy themselves. I mean, Trump is worth billions of dollars. Farage earns £1 million a year. He's had to reveal that because he's now a member of parliament and they have to reveal their earnings. £1 million a year. So these people are part of the rich establishment, but they just pretend to be anti-establishment. And they pretend to be on the side of working people. And sadly, at the moment, they're getting some purchase. They're winning some hearts and minds. And I think the reason for that is that, if you like, the old political parties are absolutely pathetic. Labour, its popularity has plummeted from not very much at the election, which is 34%, to 26%. And it's because they're just trailing along behind the Farages of this world. They're not telling the truth. They're not saying how things are. They're not standing up for principles. Instead, they're just trailing along and hoping for the best. And of course, defending the system, which is working against working people.
Yeah, so I think there's, we discussed that, and I think that's really important to understand. And when we're talking to people, we can explain that to them that, some people may be thinking, okay, reform is okay, we can argue our case, but it not with hardcore. I think the those people that are like not going to listen, we don't need to target them. The general public, I don't think general public is all sportive of racism or So I've lived in this country for a long time, and obviously I'm British. I came to Britain in 1979, and not. You've seen ups and downs where BNP came, then the riots, and the Bradford, the EDL came. But I think there was small group, very small group. There's a risk now of this becoming bigger. The rise of Farage, and especially in Europe, you've got the far right rise. So it's a danger. You feel vulnerable. You feel vulnerable going and thinking, okay, um, will these people attack you? Will they come? And there's some kind of you're looking behind your shoulder to see if you hear a step, or when you're working at night, you do feel fear, which is natural when there's so much of this Islamophobia going around, racism going around, and especially on social media. There's they've got a little bit of like, I don't know how many trolls they might have got, but it seems like they at the moment very not popular, but they're on the rise on the social media, where we need to counter them on there as well.
I think you're absolutely right, AJ. I think that fear is rising. And you can already see it, actually, within days of Trump becoming president. He signed these executive orders saying he's going to hunt down the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States who contribute hugely, by the way, to the American economy. Mm-hmm. If he were to evict the 11 million immigrants that he says he wants to evict, it's been estimated that the American economy would shrink by at least 7%. So there's an enormous contribution that immigration has made there and is making here in the UK. But there are areas in Chicago which were used to be bustling, but where people are now hiding because they're worried about the knock on the door. They're scared. And here, I think, we're not quite at the point where people fear that there's going to be a Nazi gang coming down the street, but that's the direction in which we may be headed. And again, there are two elements to this, I think. On the one hand, you have the parliamentary element of Reform UK currently doing very well, polling better than the Conservatives. And the Conservatives, incidentally, simply trying to, sound the same as Reform. So there's hardly an alternative there anyway. And that's very dangerous. I think Farage is an extremely dangerous individual. And I think it's extremely important for us. And I think, again, you're absolutely right on this, AJ. It's extremely important for us to say, first of all, that Reform UK pretends to be on the side of the working person. It says, it's going to be for a better NHS, etc. But it's all stuff and nonsense. If they had their way, actually the NHS would collapse because the NHS itself is dependent upon people who've come from other parts of the world and continues to be so. And indeed, it's the shortage of doctors in this country is because of the clampdown on immigration. So they're not on the side of working people at all. But also, their whole horrible anti-immigration thing is disgustingly racist. And we have to pin the label racist on them because I think the majority of people in this country don't want to vote for overtly racist organizations. They don't consider themselves racist and they don't want to vote for racist parties. So it's very important that we establish that this is exactly what Reform UK is. It's an openly racist party. But there's another element to it as well, and that's the element of the street. Farage wants to win in Parliament. He wants votes. But there's a street element, which, is the EDL, the BNP, the National Front of the past, and is now embodied, as it were, in the supporters of Tommy Robinson. They're very small Nazi organizations. They don't really cut much. They don't really amount to much at the moment. It's Tommy Robinson supporters who are the real danger here. And that's why, we're having that counter-protest on Saturday, the 1st of February, because he's trying to get his people out. He's in jail, justifiably so, because he's in contempt of court, because he told lies about people who were from an ethnic minority, kept repeating the lies after he was supposed to stop saying them, and that's why they sent him to jail for contempt of court. But from jail, he has called this protest, this mobilization on the 1st of February. In last time out, they got around about 15 to 20,000 people. We got about 15 to 20,000 people out. We pretty much matched them. We want to far exceed their numbers this time because, as I say, when it comes to the street, we have to have lots more people than they have because that demoralizes them and it encourages us and gives us confidence. And if we don't do that, the danger is that we will start seeing these street gangs, violence, and violence is in their DNA. We will start seeing these street gangs and people will become fearful about walking down the street.
So do you just want to tell us the details about the meeting in Shipley? How can they find out where the Shipley meeting is? And also the London demo as well, both of them.
Yes. So just to repeat, the Shipley meeting, very important meeting. We hope that lots of people are going to come to it. We've booked a large room at Shipley Library for it. Shipley Library is in the heart of Shipley, very easy to find. It's at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 29th of January. And then just 3 days later, on Saturday, the 1st of February, we have a coach going from Bradford. It's leaving Nelson Street, opposite the Coach Park, not where the police station is, but the side of the side of Nelson Street, opposite the Coach Park. That's leaving at 6:15 a.m. because we've got to get down to London for 11:30 on Saturday. You can get tickets through me, and I can give you my phone number. All you need to do is message me, and then I'll sort out the ticketing. my number is 07854 402 605. So coach going 6:15 start on Saturday, going down to the protest. It'll return to Bradford probably by about 10 in the evening. We hope to get as many people as possible on that coach to make that the biggest possible protest. We're also going to be picking up people in Huddersfield because there's a mobilisation against the Tommy Robinson supporters going on across the country. There'll be people coming down from Scotland and from all over the country just to say we want no racism and we want no fascism in London or anywhere in the United Kingdom.
So you're absolutely, we know what we're doing. We should be standing up to racism. Racism shouldn't be allowed to be racists shouldn't be allowed to get away with their views and to try to create problems from any race. Racism or Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, we're against all these. So just quickly, but what do you think, these top elite, how can we, obviously the thing is they are the ones that are in part, the deep state, or you can call it the establishment. They are, they're not going to change. They're not going to, there's a saying, isn't cheaters is not going to change his spots. They want to continue with sucking up the resources and the wealth of, and to, get people to keep on working for, peanuts. Now, the working class people or the general public, what can they do to understand the situation better? From an economic point of view, I'm talking about, because these people are told, you're the problem because immigrants, you're the problem, refugees is the problem, the Muslims are the problem, they're taking your jobs, they're taking your, taking up the doctor's surgery, there's no waiting times, so many grooming gangs, all these are like arguments. And to at the ground level are promoted to the people, to convince the people to get onto the side of the racists and these Farage party, or which you have you have Tony Robinson or Elon Musk, or these people think they're very cool, and so we need to counter these ideas.
Absolutely.
So it is an economic problem which is existing, which is exacerbating the rise of these far right extremism, because people look for easy answers, quick answers. They haven't got time. They're busy working and trying to meet. Now, so. All it took was a trigger, on last August, from the murder of 3 girls, the tragic murder of the 3 girls, and you had these people coming out, from the sewers, and they basically just smashed everything up. They attacked the police officers, they attacked mosques, they attacked hotels where they set hotels on fire. So we know they are violent. Why is there no legislation being put to stop these people? And we.
It's a very, very good question, AJ. Let me make a couple of points. First of all, we face a very serious economic situation. It's not just that. All the projections are for very low levels of growth, if growth at all, for the foreseeable future. So all this stuff that Reeves has been talking about, I'm going for growth, as if just appealing to the bosses, for their generosity to invest would work. And it's not worked, and it's not going to work. So we have very low levels of economic growth, but we have more problems than that. there is the growing climate crisis. Now, I saw estimates the other day that as the crisis grows, of course, it's going to have more and more dramatic impact upon the economy, because the climate crisis is very disruptive. You see the wildfires in the United States, gobbling up houses, causing billions of dollars worth of damage. You see flooding and so forth. So the situation is going to get worse and worse because we have a climate crisis that is growing. And again, the governments are doing, not only are they not doing what they need to do, they're cutting back on what they have said they are going to do because they say they can't afford to do it. This is what this government is doing. Oh, we're going to expand Heathrow because we need growth, even though all the environmental groups are opposed to it. So this is a very serious situation. And of course, that serious economic situation is going to make more people migrate of necessity. They're going to seek to escape the appalling conditions. And of course, the climate crisis is going to impact most upon the poorest countries. So we're going to see large numbers of people inevitably trying to move from those appalling conditions to better conditions. So migration is going to increase because of the economic system, which is creating the climate crisis. But here's another thing, another fact that, people in responsible positions ought to be pointing out. And that is that levels of investment have been so low in this country in recent years. The only economic growth that we've had has come from migration, from more people arriving here who want to work, who do work, who have skills, and who contribute to the economy. So migration is going to get worse, but migration also is a huge economic benefit at the moment when there's such low levels of investment. But one more thing, really, I want to say. One could just, say, oh, the situation's terrible, what can you do? There's nothing we can do. And you made the point that, the people at the top are not going to change. Well, they're not going to change fundamentally, but you can force them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. At the moment, they're all shifting to the right because that's where the pressure is coming electorally. But if we get our act together in a whole number of ways, then we can shift things back towards progress instead of all this reactionary, horrible stuff. And here are some examples of things it can do. First of all, if you have terrible conditions in your workplace, but you have a union, you can go on strike, or you can take industrial action in order to defend yourself. That's very, very important. In the end, working people have power because they're the people who produce the wealth. The bosses want to tell you don't have power, and they try and intimidate you. You'll be sacked, or you have your wages cut, or whatever it is. So in fact, working people have the power to confront that. But more than that, we need to, wherever we see horrible things happening, whether it's the fascists mobilizing, or whether we see, what we've seen in Palestine and continuing to see around the genocide in Gaza and now in the West Bank, we need to get out onto the street. We need to get the numbers up. We need to feel for each other that we are many and that they are few. And that gives us strength. And that, again, can shift the debate if we get enough people. But I think there's one other thing that we do have to very seriously consider, and that is just trying to get the election thing sorted. Because at the moment, seriously, you only have you have Reform, you have the Tories, who are virtually the same as Reform, you have the Liberal Democrats, who aren't much better, and Labour, who are doing really badly in government and really, again, just following the right-wing agenda. So you don't have an electoral alternative. And I think at some point, Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, people like that are going to have to come together and say, look, how do we put together an electoral challenge to all of these right-wing policies? Because we on the left, we socialists are the people who are genuinely concerned about trying to create better conditions for working people, not the right. They're about making profits and lining the pockets of their friends in big business, whatever they say, whatever populist nonsense they come out with. We're the people who are on the side of working people, and we need a political party to say this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The electoral system is not working, is failing the people. If I can say that, it's failing the people. But what the question is, right, that sorry, I just want to remind people that there was a massive protest in London last Saturday, and
Yes.
how many? I think it was about 100,000 people that had attended it.
Yes,
And
it's very big.
yeah. So that was, I think what happened was the claim was made by the police that some protesters tried to cross the line, which is not true. I think I've seen the videos and seen the evidence for myself, and I think what happened was where the Home Secretary has, played a part in trying to stop that protest from taking place. And the police should have acted more responsibly and not, tried to stop the right of protest. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely, AJ. Now, this was the 25th National March for Palestine, organized by Friends of Al-Aqsa, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and Stop the War, and some other organizations as well. But those are the three principal ones. On the previous 24 protests, which have seen vast numbers of people, hundreds of thousands of people come out, those marches have been peaceful. There's been no violence directed towards anybody or any property. There has been no anti-Semitism, no prejudice directed towards Jews as Jews, only support for the Palestinian people and opposition to the Israeli state, which calls itself a Jewish state, but is in fact a Zionist state, and it's a settler, colonial, racist, apartheid, terrorist state. So it's quite separate from being Jewish. There's been no anti-Semitism on these demonstrations, but on this occasion, the police said you cannot march where you want to march, and they wanted to start the protest by the BBC because they wanted to protest, quite rightly, that the BBC coverage over the last 15 months of the genocide in Gaza has been biased towards Israel. And the police gave this reason for not allowing the march to assemble at the BBC. They said there's a synagogue nearby. Virtually no one knew there was a synagogue nearby. And they said that they were worried that people going to the synagogue on Sabbath, on the Saturday, to worship would be intimidated. Now, A, no one knew that the synagogue was there. B, no one on these demonstrations is anti-Semitic. No one is opposed to people who are Jewish because they're Jewish. And C, there's been no history at all over the last 24 marches of anybody seeking to intimidate anybody who is Jewish. So this was just a lot of nonsense. But so they put very severe restrictions. Said you can't gather by the BBC. They initially were going to try and stop gathering at all, but in the end, at the last minute, they conceded that there could be a gathering in Whitehall. And obviously, people were pretty upset with the way in which they were now being treated by the police. And huge numbers of police were mobilized, which is a very intimidating and horrible thing. And then something very odd happened, which was that some of the demonstrators were allowed to come through towards Trafalgar Square, and then other police set on them, and there were 77 arrests. That included my old friend Chris Nynham, who is the chief steward on these occasions. He's 62 years of age. They arrested him. Subsequently, they asked the head of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Ben Jamal, to come to a police station, and they charged him with public order offences, completely nonsensical public order offences about inciting the crowd and blah, blah, blah. They even interviewed Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, and John McDonnell, the former Shadow Chancellor, under caution, and they may still be charged for under public order offences. This was a major police assault on the right to protest, and in particular on the Palestinian protest. And I can't help but feeling that Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, gave it the green light in order to prove to the Israelis and to the powerful in America who are on the side of the Israelis that things are safe with this Labour government. This Labour government isn't going to be deflected from its support for Israel that it's always given, including, of course, arming Israel in the genocide.
So yeah, so that I think we got to continue with our right to protest, to free assembly, assembly and march and protest peacefully, which I think, as you mentioned, this was the 25th protest for Palestine by the groups you mentioned, and the people were gathered because of the ongoing genocide in Gaza by the Zionist entity. So we're coming to a close, and finally, how do you see these two meetings going to take place, and what encouragement, like final message you would like to give?
Well, let me say three things very, very quickly. First of all, just one more thing on the Palestine issue. It's very important that we keep protesting. It's not over because there's a ceasefire. The ceasefire is temporary. The Israelis are still killing people in Gaza, and they're killing even more people in the West Bank now, and they are a threat to the entire region. And of course, the British government and Western governments are still arming them. So we must keep the process going. I think everybody's grateful that there's some kind of ceasefire to allow aid in, but even that's been controlled and limited by the Israelis. So we've got to keep the Palestine protests going. I think there's an intrinsic connection between the issue of Palestine and the fight against Islamophobia, because the people who are most in support of Israel are the people also trying to whip up Islamophobia in this country, and they make the connection, and we should make the connection. So I hope that the meeting on Wednesday the 29th at Shipley Library is big. We have a fantastic platform. We hope there's going to be a fantastic discussion, and people will come out of that feeling emboldened to combat the racism and the Islamophobia and the far right. And then we hope also that some people from that meeting will get on the coach down to London, and there'll be a very big mobilization in London, bigger than that Tommy Robinson can put on the street. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge that we must meet, AJ.
Yeah, thank you very much. Listen to our listeners. The show. I hope you're going to partake in these activities and not be deterred by any fear factor or any, and come out and support your right to protest. And absolutely, with everything, it's strength in numbers. Strength in numbers. Yeah. So thank you, Rob, for coming on, and I hope to get you back on some other time. But I really, really enjoyed the show today, and got to learn a lot from you. I had, I was gonna do more questions, but I think we've covered the vast majority of them here on this show. So we'll say thank you to everybody listening, and do attend these two events, one in Shipley and one in London. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, AJ. Always a huge pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Thank you very much, and I'll say goodbye and take care, Tom. Rob, and hope to speak to you again soon. I'll see you at the Shipley Library and other events that I will come to. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks, AJ. That was Rob Hoffman, who was talking about the meetings that are going to that's going to take place in Shipley, and the London demo that's going to be taking place against Tommy Robinson and his fans. So without we've got a minute or so. So I'll wrap everything up, and hope to see you soon on Community Inside program. Take care for now, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.